In bryophytes, the plant body was mainly gametophytic, wherein gametophytic generation was the predominant one. So gametophyte means that part of the plant body that produces the gametes, that is the male and the female sex organs. Selaginella and Salvinia are two forms of pteridophytes that are capable of producing heterospores, that is either macrospores or microspores. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this session on First PUC Biology. I am Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. So in this session, let us talk about a small topic, that is pteridophytes under Chapter 3, Plant Kingdom. So let us learn the general characteristics of pteridophytes and then let's move on to knowing about some of the MCQs that can be framed under this particular topic. So talking about pteridophytes, so pteridophytes are the first land plants to have developed, or first terrestrial plants to have developed the vascular tissues, that is xylem and phloem. So we know that xylem is the water conducting tissue and phloem is the food conducting tissue. So they are the first terrestrial plants to possess vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. This is very important because it can come for MCQs or 1-mark question. Next, talking about the regions where they prefer to grow. So they always prefer the area that is cool, always wet, shady places, but also some of the pteridophyte form can also flourish in sandy soil conditions, because sometimes you can find pteridophytes even growing in wherever there is some rocky texture, like wherever there is a crack in the cement and all, from there in between through the soil you can find pteridophytes growing even in arid regions also sometimes. And talking about the uses, pteridophytes are of great medicinal uses. And also they act as soil binders because their roots act like soil binders, wherein they tend to hold the soil very firmly, therefore preventing soil erosion. And they can also be used as ornamentals in gardens because their foliage, of course they don't flower, so because they don't come under the angiosperms or the flowering plants. But look at the foliage itself is so beautiful and it is so green, right? So that is why it is used as ornamentals also. The best example is equisetum. So most of the houses nowadays, they have a hybrid variety of equisetum which is grown in the form of fencing or hedges and all that in the home garden. So therefore it is used as ornamentals. The best example is horsetails. So horsetails are nothing but equisetum and ferns or the pteris or Dryopteris, all that pteridophytes. So next, talking about their plant body. So the plant body is mainly sporophyte. So remember, in bryophytes, the plant body was mainly gametophytic, wherein gametophytic generation was the predominant one. But in pteridophytes, the sporophyte or sporophytic stage is the most predominant one. The plant body is mainly a sporophyte, meaning majority of the portion of the plant body bears the spores, and it is differentiated into true root, stem and leaf. So it is from pteridophytes onwards till the gymnosperms and the angiosperms, those plants possess true root, stem and leaves. Earlier we had learnt about bryophytes and algae. They had thalloid, they didn't have a plant body, they had thallus, right, wherein they didn't have a true leaf, true root and all that. But in bryophytes, they have true root, stem and leaves. And also they possess well differentiated vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. Therefore, the movement of food and water is very well developed in this particular pteridophytes. And talking about the leaves can be larger in the case of Pteris. So previous image, if you can see, they have larger leaves in the case of Pteris, and that is in ferns. That is, such leaves are called as macrophylls, and they can also have, some of the pteridophytes can also have small leaves, that is microphylls in the case of Selaginella. So Selaginella is a pteridophyte that is found in water. It floats on the water, it grows on water, floating on the water. And this one also, this particular Lycopodium, this also has small leaves. So therefore they have microphylls or small leaves and macrophylls or larger leaves. Next, talking about the gametophyte. So that was about the sporophyte. So under sporophyte, why did I talk about the leaf? Is because In pteridophytes, it is the margin of the leaves, that is at the base or the ventral surface of the leaves. At the margin you can find the spores. So therefore the leaves come under the sporophytic generation or sporophytic stage of pteridophytes. Next, talking about gametophyte. So gametophyte means that part of the plant body that produces the gametes, that is the male and the female sex organs. So we'll know about them. So here the gametophyte part, why pteridophytes? Now I told you pteridophytes always need cool, damp, shady places to grow, right? Why they always prefer cool, damp, shady places to grow? You don't find pteridophytes in abundance everywhere. Only in the hilly regions or on the banks of the rivers, streams and all there where there is continuous flowing of water, you find them. Why? Because the gametophytic stage or phase of pteridophytes always require water, because if the fertilization has to occur or if the male gamete has to travel in pteridophytes to fuse with the female gamete, it always needs water. So that is why pteridophytes usually prefer moist and damp places for their growth. So therefore, because they need water for fertilization, the spread of pteridophytes, or you can find pteridophytes only in such geographical regions where it is always moist, that is in rainforest and tropical rainforest, Western Ghat region, there and all you can find abundance of pteridophytes growing. Next, talking about under the gametophytes, we'll talk about the sex organ. So the male sex organ, it is called as antheridia. Same thing in bryophytes also it was called antheridia, and the female sex organ is called as archegonia. In there also in bryophytes it was called archegonia. So the antheridia, it will release anthrozoids. Those anthrozoids will move in the water up to where will it move? Until it reaches the mouth of archegonia or the female sex organ. So once it reaches the archegonium, it will enter into the archegonium. And in the archegonium, what is produced? The egg is produced, right? So it will fuse with the egg. So the male gamete, that is the anthrozoid, will fuse with the female gamete, that is the egg present in the archegonium, and it will form a zygote which is diploid, right? It is diploid, 2N. And the zygote will not directly undergo meiosis, but the zygote will develop only in algal forms. The zygote will directly undergo meiosis. But in bryophytes and pteridophytes, the zygotes do not directly undergo meiosis to form spores, but instead they will produce a multicellular, well-differentiated structure which is called as the sporophyte. Now, this sporophyte are the parts of the pteridophyte that base the spore, right? So, in this sporophyte, some of the cells in the sporophyte will undergo, or it will bear structures called as sporangia at the margin of the leaf. So this is male strobili, or you can call it as sporangia. It is male strobili. So this is equisetum. I have taken the example. It is a that is sporangia. So here also you can see the sporangia that is there at the tips. So these are the sporangia that are formed, and these sporangias, if you can see, they are subtended or they are present along with the leaves of the pteridophytes. So therefore they are subtended by leaf-like appendages and they are called as sporophyll. Phyll means leaf here. So those portion of the pteridophyte leaves which bears the sporangia or the spores are called as the sporophyll. So remember like that. And in some cases, the sporophylls, they can come together and form a compact structure which is called as strobili or cones. So selaginella and equisetum is the example. I told you, see here, strobili is formed, or it is also called as the cone, and here also strobili is formed, it is also called as the cone. And the sporangia that is there, it will produce spores. How? So sporophylls, the zygote will develop into sporophylls. The sporophylls will form they form compact structures called the sporangia or the male strobili or the male cone. And this sporangia will undergo, some of the cells in the sporangia will undergo reduction division, or the spore mother cells in the sporangia will undergo reduction division, and they will start to produce the spores. Now these spores will directly germinate and they will give rise to small multicellular free living mostly photosynthetic thalloid gametophyte which is called as the prothallus. So what did we understand? We understood that the antheridia will release the anthrozoids. In the archegonia, the egg is there. The anthrozoids, which are motile, will move towards the archegonia. Once it reaches the mouth of the archegonia, it will fuse with the egg of the archegonia. It will form a diploid zygote. That zygote will become a well differentiated, or will get differentiated to form a sporophyte. That sporophyte will have sporangia. It will develop sporangia, wherein in the sporophyte, sporophylls are there, or leaf-like structures are there, which will form compact arrangement to form strobili or cone, or it is also called as sporangia. This sporangia, in the sporangia there are spore mother cells. These spore mother cells undergo meiosis or reduction division to produce spores. These spores will germinate. Once they germinate, they form a thalloid-like structure, which is called as prothallus. Now we'll look into what will happen to this prothallus. This prothallus, so I was talking about spores, right? So we know that prothallus is formed. That prothallus later on it will develop into a gametophyte. So I told you they produce spores. So pteridophytes produce spores. So the spores can be homosporous, that is they can be of the same size or similar to look, or the spores produced can be heterosporous, where it can be a larger spore, that is macrospore, or it can produce microspore. For example, Selaginella and Salvinia. So Selaginella and Salvinia are two forms of pteridophytes that are capable of producing heterospores, that is either macrospores or microspores. And here, for example, if they produce macro, so don't get confused, macrospore is also called as megaspore. So always remember, in the case of plants, the female is developed from, the female is always larger. So here, megaspore will produce the female gametophyte and the microspore will produce the male gametophyte. Always keep in mind, whenever we say mega or macro or something big, that will lead to the formation of a female gametophyte. So here megaspore germinates to give rise to female gametophyte and microspores will form the male gametophyte. And the female gametophyte will get retained in the plant parts, that is in the sporophyte itself, it will get retained and they will development of zygote will take place. That zygote, so that zygote will undergo it will get differentiated to form a young embryo, and that young embryo will develop into a new plant later on. So that so much will happen in the female gametophyte. So once the spores are liberated, what happens? The macrospore will germinate to form the female gametophyte. The microspore will germinate to form the male gametophyte. In the female gametophyte, we already know that the male gametophyte now, that is the antheridia, will release the anthrozoids. It will fuse with the egg that is present in the female gametophyte, that is the archegonia. After that, they will form a zygote. That zygote will undergo, it will develop into young embryos, and the young embryos will develop into sporophyte. That sporophyte again, cycle will continue. So that is how life cycle occurs. So they have two stages, that is gametophytic and sporophytic, wherein in pteridophytes, sporophytic is the most predominant one. So next, talking about some of the classes under pteridophytes. So in your NCERT textbook, they have just given the classes and some examples. No characteristics have been given for this particular classes, unlike how we studied for algae and bryophytes. So for pteridophytes, we need to know only what are the classes. So it is of 4 classes, wherein they have Psilopsida, for example, Xylotum. Then comes Lycopsida, that is Selaginella and Lycopodium. Then we have Spinopsida, for example, Equisetum. Then Pteropsida, that is Dryopteris. Then Pteris, Adiatum, all that comes under Pteropsida. So these are the 4 classes of pteridophytes. So this was about pteridophytes, the general characteristics, how they reproduce, all that we came to know. And now we'll move on to learning about some of the MCQs under this. So the first one, the leaf-like appendages in Selaginella are called as strobili, sporophyll, sporophyte or gametophyte. Is it strobili? No, it is not strobili, because these leaf-like appendages, they get arranged compactly to form a strobili. So strobili is not the correct answer. So what was the question? What are the leaf-like appendages called, right? So it is called as sporophylls. Because they are called sporophylls, because these leaf-like appendages bear the spores. So that is why they are called as sporophylls. Is it sporophyte? No. Sporophyte means that part of the plant body that produces the spores is called as the sporophyte. Is it gametophyte? No. That part of the plant body that produces the gametes is called as a gametophyte. So therefore, they are not the right answer. The answer is sporophylls. Next, the first terrestrial evolved plants are, is it pteridophytes, gymnosperms, algae or bryophytes? No. Algae and bryophytes, we don't call them as terrestrial plants because mostly they are aquatic in nature and they don't have a particular leaf, stem or root. They have thallus, right? But it is pteridophytes are the first terrestrial evolved plants. Why? Because pteridophytes have evolved from algae and bryophytes, but they are the first plants to have vascular tissues in them, xylem and phloem. So that is why pteridophytes is the right answer here. They are the first terrestrial plants. Right in the dinosaur era itself, you can find the pteridophytes, also the gymnosperms. But the gymnosperms also have vascular tissues, but the first evolved is pteridophytes. Next, the first terrestrial plants to possess vascular tissues. I've already explained in the previous question. Now it is pteridophytes. Because algae, bryophytes, they don't have vascular tissues. Gymnosperms do have, but the first evolved ones are pteridophytes. So therefore, pteridophytes is the answer. Next, the female sex organ in pteridophyte is called, is it antheridia, sporangia, conidia, archegonia? It is archegonia. Read the question. I have asked female sex organ. So therefore, the answer is archegonia. Is it antheridia? No, because antheridia is the male sex organ. Is it sporangia? No, because sporangia are the ones that is that produces the spores. It is neither the male sex organ nor the that is female sex organ, but they are just the organs that produce spores. And conidia, no, because conidia you find them in fungi. You don't find them in bryophytes or plant kingdom. Under plant kingdom, it doesn't come. So therefore, answer is archegonia. Next question, the predominant phase in the life cycle of pteridophytes. It is sporophyte phase, right? The answer is sporophyte. Gametophyte? No, because gametophyte is the predominant phase in bryophytes. So therefore, the answer here is, it's not sporophylls because sporophylls are the leaf-like structures that bear spores. And it's not gymnosperm because the gymnosperm is a separate group under plant kingdom. So therefore, answer is sporophyte. Next, dash is an example of Psilopsida. So, Psilopsida, is it Selaginella, Lycopodium, Xylotum, Pteris? No, Selaginella comes under Lycopsida, Lycopodium comes under Lycopsida, Xylotum comes under Psilopsida, Pteris comes under Pteropsida. So, therefore, the answer here is Xylotum. Easy to remember. Psilopsida, Xylotum, right? Half of this only answer is there. So, Xylotum is the answer. Next, Dryopteris belong to the class Pteropsida, Lycopsida, Psilopsida, Spinopsida. It is Pteropsida. Dryopteris. Here, see, Pteris. Here, Pteropsida. So, like that you have to remember Pteropsida is the answer. So, likewise, they can ask Spinopsida belongs to the class dash, or an example for Spinopsida is dash. So, like that, based on these MCQs, now you have to be able to understand how you can frame MCQs on your own. So, here I have said 7 MCQs. Many of the MCQs still can be framed under this particular topic. So, this was about this particular session wherein you learnt about the general characteristics of pteridophytes, where they grow, how they reproduce, their plant body and all that. And also we came to know about some of the MCQs that can be framed in exam point of view under this particular topic. So, I hope you understood this session. We shall meet again in the coming session with a new topic under the same chapter and discuss about its MCQ. So, see you in the next session. Thank you.